The year was 2347, and humanity was about to die. Park stood at the back of the diplomatic chamber, trying to make himself invisible. He was just a translator, nothing more. A 32-year-old man who had joined the United Earth Space Service not for adventure or glory, but because his younger sister needed expensive medical treatment. The military paid well. That was the only reason he was here, floating in space aboard the UESS Horizon, watching the most important negotiation in human history fall apart. Through the massive observation window, he could see them. 3,000 warships, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. They hung in the darkness like sleeping dragons, their weapons pointed at Earth. One command from the Emperor and human civilization would end in fire. The delegation sat on one side of the long table. They were tall beings, nearly 7 feet each, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were large and golden, without pupils, and small horns grew from their heads like crowns made of bone. They had ruled 12 star systems for 3,000 years. To them, humans were children, insects, a minor problem to be solved. Admiral led the human side. He was a good man, new, but he was also desperate. Everyone in the room was desperate. Earth's entire fleet was less than 200 ships. Against 3,000, they would last perhaps an hour. The negotiations had been going badly for 3 days. The wanted complete surrender. They wanted humanity to give up all weapons, all space travel, all freedom. They wanted humans to become servants of the Empire forever. Admiral was trying to find another way, any other way. Listened as the translation devices turned words into English and English words into. He was not supposed to speak. He was only here because he knew some language from old trade broadcasts he had studied years ago, just in case the machines failed. The High Commander was speaking now, his voice cold and hard. We offer you a choice that we have never offered to any species before. Peaceful union with our empire. This is generous. This is kind. You should accept with gratitude. Admiral leaned forward. We ask only for equality, a true union of peoples where humanity keeps its freedom and its dignity, surely. The High Commander made a sharp sound that the translation device rendered as laughter. You speak of dignity. Your species has existed for a mere heartbeat. You know nothing of. He stopped. Something had happened. The translation device had made an error, or perhaps it was something in the way Admiral had phrased his words. The delegation was suddenly very quiet, looking at each other with expressions could not read. Then the doors at the back of the side opened, and she walked in. Had never seen a female before. She was taller than the males, nearly 8 feet, and her silver skin shifted through colors like light through a prism. Her horns were more delicate, curving gracefully backward, and her golden eyes seemed to hold ancient starlight. She wore robes that flowed like water, covered in crystals that caught the light. Princess of House, the Emperor's eldest daughter, heir to the throne. She walked to the center of the room, and every bowed their head. Then she turned to face the humans, and her eyes found. He did not know why. He was nobody. He was standing in the shadows, trying not to be noticed. But she looked directly at him, and something passed between them that he could not name. Then she spoke, and her voice was like music made of ice. The human delegation has offered a blood union, she said. A sacred marriage between our peoples. This is unexpected. This is interesting. Admiral's face went pale. Your Highness, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. We said peaceful union, not. I accept. The room went silent, felt his heart stop. The High Commander stepped forward, his skin flushing dark purple with shock. Princess, surely you cannot mean. I accept the blood union, repeated. Her eyes were still on, with him, the one who speaks our language. Every head in the room turned toward. He wanted to run. He wanted to hide. He wanted to wake up from this nightmare. Admiral grabbed his arm and pulled him into a side corridor. The Admiral's hands were shaking. "Listen to me carefully," said. "The do not joke about blood unions. It is the most sacred bond in their culture. If we refuse now, if we tell them it was a mistake, they will see it as the greatest possible insult. They will attack immediately." "But I cannot marry an alien princess." His voice was too loud, too panicked. "This is insane. There must be another way." His eyes were full of pain. "Son, I wish there was. God knows I wish there was. But that fleet out there will destroy Earth in 6 hours if we refuse. 12 billion people, your sister, your friends, everyone you have ever known." Felt the weight of those words crush him. He thought of his sister, still recovering from her surgery. He thought of the little apartment in Seoul where he grew up. He thought of Earth, blue and beautiful and fragile, spinning slowly in the darkness. He thought of 12 billion lives. "If I do this," he said slowly, "if I agree, the war stops. The war stops, Earth survives, humanity lives." Closed his eyes. He was nobody. He was just a translator with debts and a sick sister and no special skills. He was not brave. He was not strong. He was just a man who was very, very scared. But when he opened his eyes, his voice was steady. "Okay," he said, "I will do it." The flagship was called the Eternal Dawn, and it was larger than anything had ever seen. As the small shuttle carried him across the void between ships, he stared at it through the window and felt very, very small. The vessel was the size of a city, perhaps the size of a country. Towers and spires rose from its surface like mountains, and lights glowed from a million windows. This was where he would be married. This was where his old life would end. Attendants met him when he landed. They were polite but distant, their silver faces showing no emotion. They led him through corridors that seemed to go on forever, past gardens filled with glowing plants, past fountains that flowed upward instead of down, past statues of heroes who had died before humanity learned to make fire. They brought him to a chamber and told him to wait. He waited for 6 hours. When they finally came back, they carried his wedding clothes. The robes were heavy, made of some material that felt like silk but weighed like metal. Thousands of tiny crystals were sewn into the fabric, each one catching the light. The attendants dressed him carefully, painting strange symbols on his face with silver paint. He looked at himself in the mirror and did not recognize the man looking back. The ceremony was held in a great hall at the heart of the ship. Had never seen so many in one place. Thousands of them filled the chamber, standing in perfect rows, their golden eyes fixed on him as he walked down the central path. He kept his back straight and his face calm, but inside he was screaming. Princess waited at the end of the path. She stood before an altar made of crystal, wearing robes even more elaborate than his. Her skin was a deep violet color that did not understand. Later, he would learn that violet meant she was thinking deeply, considering something important. At that moment, he only knew that she was beautiful in a way that was not human, not comfortable, not safe. The ceremony was long and complicated. A priest spoke words that the translation device in his ear could barely keep up with. He was told to repeat phrases he did not understand, to make promises he could not keep, to accept bonds he did not want. Then came the part he had been dreading. The priest produced a small knife made of black crystal. He spoke more words, ancient words, and then he cuts palm. The blade was so sharp that barely felt it. Blood welled up, red and human. Held out her hand and the priest cut her as well. Her blood was not red. It was silver like mercury, and it glowed faintly in the dim light. "Join hands," the priest commanded. Reached out, his hand was shaking. His hand was steady as stone. When their palms touched, he gasped. Her blood was cold, so cold it burned, and he felt something pass between them like electricity. For one moment he felt her presence in his mind, vast and ancient and terrifyingly intelligent. And he knew that she could feel him too. All his fear, all his doubt, all his desperate determination to save his world. His eyes widened slightly. Her skin flickered from violet to a soft blue color he had not seen before. Then the moment passed, and the priest declared them married. The fleet powered down its weapons that night. The peace treaty was signed before had finished washing the silver paint from his face. He was given quarters aboard the Eternal Dawn. The rooms were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, filled with alien furniture and strange decorations. A window showed the stars, cold and distant. Sat on the edge of the bed and waited for someone to tell him it was over, that the political situation was stable now, that he could go home, that this had all been temporary. Days passed, then weeks, no one came. He asked the attendants when he could return to Earth. They looked at him with confusion. Return? The princess's consort could not simply leave. The blood bond was sacred, eternal. He asked to speak with Admiral. His request was politely refused. He asked to contact his sister. His request was politely refused. He asked to see Princess. His request was politely refused. He was a prisoner in a golden cage, and no one would tell him why. Finally, after 3 weeks of waiting, he stopped asking politely. He walked out of his quarters and refused to stop when the guards called after him. He marched through the corridors of the Eternal Dawn, ignoring everyone who tried to stop him, until he found the door to his chambers. He pushed it open without knocking. She was sitting by a window, reading something on a glowing tablet. She looked up when he entered, and her skin shifted to that soft blue color again. "You cannot keep me here forever," said. His voice was harder than he had ever heard it. "The war is over. The treaty is signed. Let me go home." Set down her tablet. She stood slowly, and he remembered suddenly how tall she was, how powerful, how alien. "You do not understand," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that he could not identify. "At the moment our hands touched, I felt what was inside you. I felt a man who was terrified, who wanted nothing more than to run away. But you did not run. You stood there and accepted death for the sake of people you would never meet." She took a step toward him, then another. "In 3,000 years I have never met anyone like that. Among my own people such selflessness does not exist. We calculate everything. We measure every sacrifice against every gain." She was close now, close enough that he could see the light shifting beneath her silver skin. "You gained nothing from this marriage. You lost everything, and yet you did it anyway." Her hand reached out and touched his face, gentle as a whisper. "Did you truly think I would let someone like that simply walk away?" 3 months passed aboard the Eternal Dawn, and slowly began to understand the truth of his situation. The Empire was not the unified power it appeared to be. Beneath the surface, there were cracks. Factions fought for influence. Old families competed for power. And at the center of it all was a dying emperor and his 2 children, who could not have been more different. Princess was the elder child, calm and thoughtful, dedicated to her people's welfare. Her younger brother, Prince, was something else entirely. Met him for the first time at a formal dinner, and the hatred in the prince's golden eyes was impossible to miss. "So this is the human," said, his voice dripping with disgust. "The creature my sister has bound herself to." Said nothing. He had learned that silence was often safer than speech in this place. Commanded the military. He had been the one pushing for Earth's destruction before the marriage stopped him. The peace treaty had taken away his chance for glory, for conquest, for the war he had wanted so badly. He blamed for this. He blamed even more. "The treaty holds only as long as the marriage holds," one of his advisors explained to privately. "If the prince can prove the marriage is false, that there is no real bond between you, he will have legal grounds to dissolve it. And then the war will begin again." Understood then why he could not leave. His freedom was not just about him anymore. If he ran away, if he admitted the marriage was only political, would have his excuse. Earth would burn. He was trapped. But as the weeks went on, he found that the cage was not as terrible as he had expected. Began to seek him out. At first, it was only for meals. She would invite him to her private dining room and they would eat together in awkward silence. But slowly, carefully, they began to talk. She asked him about Earth, not about its defenses or its weaknesses, but about its beauty. What did rain feel like? What were seasons? Why did humans enjoy something called music? Found himself telling her everything. He told her about the mountains of Korea, covered in autumn colors. He told her about the ocean, vast and wild and full of mystery. He told her about his sister, who laughed too loud and cried too easily and meant everything to him. Listened with an intensity that surprised him. She absorbed every word like someone who had been starving for something real. In return, she began to share pieces of herself. She told him about the pressure of being heir to an empire of 12-star systems, about the loneliness of growing up in a palace where every relationship was calculated, every friendship measured for political value, about her mother, who had died when she was young, and her father, who loved her but was too ill now to show it. "I have never had a conversation like this," she admitted one night. Her skin was that soft blue color again, the color had learned meant vulnerability. "No one has ever asked me what I think, what I feel. They only ask what I want them to do." Something shifted in his chest, something he did not want to name. He began teaching her to cook Korean food. The ship had nothing like the ingredients he needed, so they improvised. Alien vegetables that almost tasted like cabbage. Strange meat that almost tasted like beef. The results were terrible, but approached each lesson with such serious concentration that found himself smiling despite everything. She burned the first attempt, and the second, and the third. But on the fourth try she produced something almost edible, and the joy on her face was so genuine, so unexpected that felt his breath catch in his throat. Her skin flushed rose gold, a color he had never seen before, and she laughed, actually laughed, at her own success. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. That night, alone in his quarters, sat in the darkness and tried to understand what was happening to him. He was supposed to be a prisoner. He was supposed to be counting the days until he could escape. He was supposed to be dreaming of Earth, of home, of freedom. Instead, he was thinking about her laugh, about the way her skin changed colors with her emotions, about the quiet sadness in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. He thought about the moment their hands had touched at the wedding and the connection he had felt. He had assumed it was just the alien ritual, some strange magic. But lately, when he was near her, he felt something similar, a warmth in his chest, a feeling of rightness that made no sense. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him like a physical blow. It was impossible. It was insane. She was an alien princess, ancient and powerful and not even the same species. He was nobody, a translator from a small planet that they had almost destroyed. But the heart does not care about logic. The heart does not listen to reason. He lay awake until dawn, staring at the alien stars through his window, and wondered what he was supposed to do now. 1 year after the wedding, Prince finally made his move. It happened at the Grand Assembly, a gathering of all 12 noble houses that ruled the empire. Thousands of the most powerful had come to the Eternal Dawn for this event. They filled the great assembly hall like a sea of silver, their golden eyes fixed on the throne where the old emperor sat. Stood beside, dressed in formal robes, trying to look like he belonged. He had gotten better at pretending over the past year. He could walk like a consort, speak like one, even eat their strange food without making faces. But inside, he still felt like a fraud. The assembly was supposed to be routine. Reports from the 12 systems, discussions of trade and territory, nothing dangerous. Then stepped forward and everything changed. "I call for a review of the blood union between Princess and the human," he announced. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "I believe it is false. I believe it was a trick to stop our righteous conquest of the human worlds." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Skin flashed dark red, anger knew now, but her voice stayed calm. The marriage was performed according to every tradition, she said. You were there, brother. You witnessed it yourself. I witnessed a ceremony, replied. But a ceremony means nothing without true emotional bond. This is our most sacred law. A blood union requires real connection, real feeling between both parties. He turned to face the crowd, his arms spread wide. Can anyone here truly believe that a human is capable of bonding with one of us? Their species is primitive. Emotional, yes, but shallow. They cannot feel as we feel. They cannot love as we love. The emperor raised a trembling hand. What do you propose, my son? Smiled, and there was no warmth in it. I propose a truth communion. Let the human's heart be laid bare before all the houses. Let us see what he truly feels. If there is genuine bond, I will accept it and never speak of this again. But if there is nothing, if his heart holds only fear and the desire to escape, then the marriage must be dissolved and the treaty with it. Silence fell over the assembly, felt the blood drain from his face. He had heard of the truth communion. It was an ancient ritual that projected a person's deepest emotions for all to see. There was no way to hide anything, no way to pretend. Stepped forward. This is unnecessary. The human has proven his commitment. What are you afraid of, sister? Interrupted. If the bond is real, the communion will prove it, unless you already know what we will find. There was nothing could say to that. The trap was perfect. If she refused, it would be seen as admission of guilt. If she agreed, and's heart showed nothing but the desire to go home, everything would be lost. The emperor nodded slowly. The truth communion will take place tomorrow. May the ancestors reveal the truth. That night came to his quarters. She moved quietly, her skin pale with worry, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I came to give you a choice, she said. I can arrange for a shuttle to take you to Earth tonight. We will tell everyone you died in an accident. You will be free. Stared at her. What about the treaty? What about the war? The war will come regardless once the communion reveals the truth. She would not meet his eyes. At least this way you survive, you go home, you live your life. And what happens to you? Silence. What happens to you if I leave? She finally looked at him, and he saw fear in her golden eyes for the first time. Will use my failure to take power from our father. I will be exiled if I am lucky, if I am not lucky. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Thought about Earth. He thought about, probably worried sick about him. He thought about the apartment in Seoul, the smell of his mother's cooking, the sound of rain on the roof. Then he thought about her laugh, about the blue color of her skin when she was vulnerable, about a year of shared meals and late-night conversations and slowly learning each other's hearts. He thought about living the rest of his life, knowing she was dead because of him. I am not leaving, he said. Skin flickered with colors he had never seen before. You do not understand. The communion will show everything, every thought, every feeling, if your heart truly wishes to return to Earth. Then it will show that, agreed. He took a step toward her, then another, until he was close enough to take her hands in his. Her skin was cool against his warmth. But that is not all it will show. She looked at him with confusion. What do you mean? Smiled, and it was the most honest expression he had ever worn. I mean that you are not the only one who has been feeling things this past year. I mean that somewhere along the way, I stopped wanting to leave. I stopped dreaming about Earth. I started dreaming about you instead. Her skin turned rose gold, that beautiful color of joy, and her golden eyes went wide. You do not mean that, she whispered. Tomorrow, in front of everyone, my heart will prove that I do. He squeezed her hands gently. I am not scared of the truth communion. I am not scared of them seeing what I feel. I am only scared that I never told you myself. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, carefully, she leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. Humans, she murmured, and there was wonder in her voice. You impossible, wonderful, terrifying creatures. They stayed like that until dawn, and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt like he was home. The truth communion was held in the crystal chamber, the most sacred place on the eternal dawn. The walls were made of something that looked like glass but was harder than steel, carved with the names of every who had ever lived. Thousands of years of history surrounded as he walked to the center of the room. Every representative of the 12 noble houses was present. They stood in perfect circles around the central platform, their silver faces showing nothing, their golden eyes watching everything. Prince stood at the front, arms crossed, a small smile on his face. He was certain of victory. Stood beside her father's throne. The old emperor looked tired, ancient, ready to let go of life itself. But his eyes were still sharp, and they followed with something that might have been curiosity. "Park of Earth," the high priest announced. "You stand before the truth communion, your heart will be opened, your soul will be revealed. Do you accept this willingly?" Looked at, she was trying to keep her face calm, but her skin betrayed her, shifting through colors of fear and hope and something deeper. "I accept," said. The high priest was old, older than anyone had met. His hands trembled as he reached up to place them on his temples. The touch was cold, and then everything disappeared. Was floating in darkness. No, not darkness. Light, pure light surrounding him, flowing through him, pulling things out of him that he had never shown anyone. The audience gasped. Above the platform, images began to form, made of color and light and raw emotion. His emotions projected for all to see. They saw his fear first. The terror of that first day when he realized what he had agreed to. The loneliness of those early weeks, trapped on an alien ship, surrounded by beings who saw him as less than nothing. They saw his anger, his frustration, his desperate desire to go home. Smile grew wider. But then the images changed. They saw the first dinner with the awkward silence that slowly became conversation. They saw him teaching her to cook, laughing at her failures, cheering at her success. They saw late nights talking about nothing and everything, learning each other's languages and customs and hearts. They saw the moment he realized he was falling in love. It appeared as a burst of golden light, warm and sudden and overwhelming. They saw him lying awake at night, thinking about her. They saw him choosing to stay, not because of duty or fear, but because leaving would mean losing her. They saw love, real love, deep love. Love that did not care about species or politics or the cold emptiness of space. The images grew brighter, stronger. His heart was laid completely bare, and what it showed was not weakness. What it showed was fire. Humans did not love carefully. They did not calculate their emotions or measure their devotion. When a human heart chose to love, it loved completely, without reservation, without limit, without any thought for self-preservation. The light filled the entire chamber. Some of them had to look away, overwhelmed by the intensity of what they were seeing. Then it was over. The high priest removed his hands and staggered, suddenly exhausted, but he stayed standing. He would not fall, not now. Silence filled the chamber, complete, absolute silence. Smile was gone. His skin had turned pale, the color of shock. "This proves nothing," he said, but his voice was weak. "Humans are masters of self-deception. He has tricked himself into believing." Enough. The word came from the emperor. Everyone turned to look as the old rose slowly from his throne. He was shaking, barely able to stand, but his voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of rule. "In all our history," the emperor said, "no outsider has ever passed the truth communion. Our own people sometimes fail it. The bond is difficult to prove, difficult to feel, difficult to show." He stepped down from the throne, moving toward with painful slowness. This human did not merely pass. He burned brighter than any I have ever seen. He stopped in front of and looked up at him. They were the same height now, the old emperor bent by age, the young human standing tall despite his exhaustion. Now I understand why my son wanted to destroy your species before you could rise, the Emperor said quietly. You are dangerous, not because of your weapons or your ships, but because of this. He placed a withered hand over his heart. You love without limit. You sacrifice without calculation. You burn like stars, brief and brilliant and impossible to ignore. He turned to face the assembly, and when he spoke again, his voice filled the chamber. The marriage stands, the treaty holds, and from this day forward humanity is not merely tolerated within our empire. They are welcomed. Let their fire remind us of what we have forgotten. Let their passion teach us what we have lost. The chamber erupted. Some cheered, some protested, stormed out, his plans ruined, his ambitions crushed, but barely noticed any of it. Was walking toward him, her skin glowing rose gold, the most beautiful color he had ever seen. She reached him and took his hands, and he felt that connection again, that warmth, that sense of coming home. You wonderful, impossible human, she whispered. You're wonderful, impossible human, he corrected. 3 years later stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn, watching a human cargo ship dock at the trade station. The first of many. Cultural exchanges were flourishing. Human music played in markets. Art hung in Earth's museums. Two civilizations that had almost destroyed each other were now learning from each other, growing together, becoming something new. Arms wrapped around him from behind. Rested her chin on his shoulder, her skin a contented gold. Regretting your decision to stay, she asked. It was the same question she asked every anniversary, and his answer was always the same. Never, he said, not once, not ever. Somewhere across the galaxy, humanity spread among the stars, welcomed for the first time as equals. All because one ordinary man chose love over fear and meant it with all his heart.